I was still holding my hospital discharge papers when my brother laughed and told me to stop pretending and make dinner. The room went quiet, not because anyone cared, but because they were waiting to see what I would do. My mother stayed on the coals saying nothing. The TV kept playing. People heard him. They saw me standing there bent from stitches, but no one stepped in. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stood there and let the silence expose everything that had been hidden for years. Right behind me, someone was watching and didn't look away. Signed the lease on a Tuesday afternoon. The office smelled like printer ink and old carpet. The woman behind the desk slid the paper toward me and said congratulations like it meant something. I remember holding the pen a second longer than needed, not because I was unsure, but because it felt like the first thing in my life that was only mine. One bedroom, thin walls, a kitchen barely wide enough to turn around in, but it was quiet. It was mine that night. My mother called. She didn't ask how the apartment looked. She didn't ask how I felt. Her voice carried that same tired weight. I had grown up hearing the kind that made every request sound like an emergency. Derek lost his job again, she said. He just needs a place for a little while. You have space now. I stood in the middle of my empty living room staring at the walls. I had just paid for. I could hear my own breathing. It echoed slightly. I said, I just moved in. She sighed like I had disappointed her already. He's your brother, she said. I raised you both alone. I don't ask for help unless I need it. That part always worked. Not because it was untrue, but because it was untouchable. There was no way to respond without sounding selfish, so I said yes. I told her it would just be for a short time, a few months maybe. She said, of course. If Derek showed up on a Sunday afternoon, 2 garbage bags and a box, he didn't look around much, just dropped everything near the couch and said, this works, like he was testing out a hotel room. I remember thinking he would ask where to put his things or how we'd split space, but he didn't ask anything. First night I cooked pasta. It felt easier than explaining anything. We ate in front of the TV. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. It felt temporary. I told myself this was temporary. Week later I brought up rent lightly. Just half, I said, until you get back on your feet. He nodded, without looking away from his phone. Yeah, I got youth first month. He gave me some cash. Not enough, but something. The second month he said work was slow. The third month he said he was between things. The words stayed vague, but the pattern didn't. Chenjai called my mother. She answered on the second ring. I kept my voice calm. I asked if Derek had been sending her money, like she mentioned before. There was a pause, just long enough to notice. He's struggling, she said. Don't push him. Right now I hung up and stared at my bank app. Rent had already gone through. Bills were stacking quietly in the background. It wasn't panic yet. It was something quieter than that. Something like a slow understanding settling in. That night, Derek had friends over. They were loud, but not in an obvious way, just constant noise. Laughter that didn't stop, doors opening and closing. I stayed in my room trying to read. The walls carried everything. I didn't sleep much in the morning. The sink was full plates. I didn't use cups. I didn't touch. I cleaned it before work because I didn't want to come home to it. Later, it felt easier that way. When I left, he was still asleep on the couch, one arm hanging off the side phone in his hand, like nothing had changed for him at all. On my lunch break, my mother texted, be patient with him. He's having a hard time. I read it twice, then locked my phone. I didn't respond. By the third month, the apartment no longer felt like something I had built. It felt like something I was maintaining quietly so it wouldn't fall apart. Derek stopped pretending he was looking for work. He slept late, stayed up later, and moved through the space like it adjusted around him. I learned to step over things instead of asking him to move them. Groceries disappeared faster than I could replace them. Milk I bought in the morning would be gone by night. I started keeping small things in my room, snacks, yogurt, anything I could stretch through the week. It felt strange at first, like I was hiding in my own place, but it solved arguments before they started. When I asked him about bills, he said he thought I had it covered. Not in a rude way, just as a fact, like the sky being gray or the floor being solid. It wasn't a fight. It was an assumption that didn't include May. Called my mother again. I kept it simple. I told her I couldn't keep paying for everything alone. She sighed the same way she always did, like the problem was my timing, not the situation. He told me. He's been helping, she said. I don't know why you're making it sound worse than it. I say. He didn't argue. I had started noticing something every time I explained things clearly. They came back to me, changed, smaller, softer, less real. It made me question my own memory. In quiet moments, weeks turned into months. Dad brought people over without asking, not large groups, just enough to fill the space with noise. Conversations that didn't include me, music that stayed on too late, laughter that Carried into the morning, I stopped sitting in the living room. It didn't feel like mine anymore. Nina became expected, not requested. If I didn't cook, he would stand in the kitchen and open cabinets like something was missing. He never said it directly, but the message was there. I started cooking earlier, just to avoid that moment. My schedule got tighter. I worked mornings, then classes, then evening shifts. Some nights I came home so tired, I sat on the edge of my bed, still wearing my shoes, staring at nothing but the kitchen would still be waiting, the sink full, the trash leaning over its edge. One night I left everything as it was. I told myself I would clean it in the morning. When I woke up, nothing had changed. The smell was worse. The plates were still there. Derek walked past them, grabbed a drink and sat down like it wasn't something he noticed. I cleaned it again before work. My hands moved automatically. I didn't think about it much anymore. That scared me more than anything. Mother started calling less, but when she did, it was always about him. Make sure he's okay. Don't stress him out. He just needs time. She never asked how I was doing. I stopped expecting her tooth. There were small moments that stayed with me longer than they should have, like the time I came home with a fever and he asked what I was making for dinner, or when he used my last grocery money on takeout for his friends and told me. A worry too much. None of it was loud. None of it looked like a crisis. From the outside, it was just constant, quiet pressure building, without a clear moment to point. Or I started feeling like I was visiting my own life. Like everything important happened around me, but never with me. My name was still on the lease. My money still paid every bill, but the space didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. One night, I sat at the kitchen table long after everything was cleaned. The apartment was finally quiet. Derek had gone out. The clock on the wall ticked softly. I remember placing my hand flat on the table and realizing I couldn't remember the last time I sat there without a task. Thought stayed longer than it should. Had the pain started as something small, a dull pressure low in my abdomen? It came and went in quiet waves. I told myself it was stress or bad food or not enough sleep. There was always a reason that didn't require stopping. I kept going to work. I kept cooking. I kept cleaning. Derek didn't notice anything different. Or maybe he did, and it didn't matter. The routine stayed the same. That was the rule. Nothing changed unless it affected him directly. My friend Sarah asked me about it once over lunch. She watched me press my hand against my side and said, "You should get that checked." I smiled and said it was nothing. She didn't push. She just looked at me a second longer than usual, like she was memorizing something. She couldn't fix the pain. Got sharper over the next few days. Not constant, just enough to interrupt. Whatever I was doing, I started moving slower, sitting down more often, timing my steps so it wouldn't show. One night, I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when it hit hard enough to drop me to the floor. My knees hit tile. My vision blurred for a second. I stayed there waiting for it to pass, listening to the TV in the other room. Derek didn't come in. He knocked once lightly and said, "You okay?" through the door. I said, "Yeah." That was the moment something shifted, not loudly, not dramatic, just a quiet line forming in my mind. I realized I'd stopped expecting anything from him a long time ago. I just hadn't said it out loud. I called Sarah after that. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "I'm on my way." The next part moved fast. Lights, voices, a stretcher, the ceiling passing above me in pieces. At the hospital they said it was my appendix. It had ruptured already. They used words like urgent and infection and risk. I signed forms without reading them. I remember thinking how simple the paper felt compared to everything else. When I woke up, Sarah was there. She looked tired but steady, like she had been holding that position for hours. I asked if anyone else had come. She shook her head gently. Over the next few days, I stayed in that room watching time move in small pieces, nurses checking vitals, machines making soft sounds, Sarah coming and going around her shifts. My phone stayed mostly silent. My mother called once, but not for me. Sarah answered. She told me later. My mother asked if I could check on Derek because he hadn't been eating properly. I didn't react at the time. I just listened and let the information settle somewhere deep, where things stopped surprising me. And the fourth day they discharged me. They gave me instructions: rest, no heavy lifting, watch for fever. I nodded, like I would follow.